Hello everybody and welcome to the Virtual Endurance Championships 24 Hours of Le Mans. It all kicks off next Saturday, but tonight we have qualifying ready and waiting to go. We've got two categories as well, with championships absolutely finely poised and really no way of telling who's going to come out on top. We've got a great venue for our season to end as well at the Circuit de la Sarthe in France. It's wonderful to be back here again. It feels like almost yesterday that we were here for last year's event, but it's rolled around again. Season 13 almost drawing to a close for the Virtual Endurance Championship, and I'm sure we're going to have an absolutely classic race finishing all in 8 days' time on the Sunday. My name's Ewan O'Leary. I'm alongside Cam Roger and Neil Heatley for this one. And Cam, first of all, it's great to be back with VEC once again. I'm very much looking forward to this one. It's always nice to get a bit of build-up going on, a little bit of excitement for us here early on with qualifying. And as you can see, the drivers are about to get their outlaps underway right now. But yeah, massively looking forward to this as we kind of kick off our Le Mans week heading towards next Sunday.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing finish to the season. And for those of you who aren't following the schedule, this is obviously 1 week prior to the race. So the teams have a whole week left still to prepare, but today is the day to get down your qualifying time. So we're going to start with this 45-minute session. Then after that, there'll be a short break, and then we'll go out for the hyperpole, where the top 6 in each category. So that means there'll only be 12 cars on the track for that hyperpole session, and that is where they can do their final laps to try and do their grid positions. So really, this is almost an elimination sort of session. So we're looking for everyone P7 downwards, really, as to what their final grid positions are going to be.
Yeah, as you said, we've got 45 minutes here of a qualifying session first of all, but this is a long circuit, 3.5 minutes, and for the LMP2 cars, about just under 4 for the GTE cars. You'd think there's going to be loads of space for these guys out there, but there's 41 cars barreling down towards the first chicane all at once, it seems, at the moment here on the Mulsanne Straight. And Neil, it's going to be quite difficult to find a bit of free track space when this session gets into the rhythm of it. I think that's going to be half of the challenge of this, getting your lap in first of all, but finding a bit of free track space is going to be vital as well.
Yes, indeed, but you must say it's far more. There is a little bit more space here at Le Mans than there has been at any of the tracks that we visited this season, just because of the pure length of it. But also, you did say, trying to get a clean lap, because there are some sections of Le Mans where it's very fast, but it's kind of one line, especially in qualifying. Just thinking through the Porsche curves, through Corvette and up towards Maison Blanche. That section is incredibly fast for both classes, but it really is only one line. So the LMP2s in particular have to be very careful of that when they come up with GT cars, when they're still both doing fast laps.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of the LMP2 cars actually have got themselves out in front right now, and we're having a bit of a discussion before we actually came on the air here. What about going out completely first of everybody if you're an LMP2 car and then not getting caught up in the traffic, or do you wait a little bit later on for the rubber to come in here, Cam? It's a bit of a balance that you have to find between free track space that we were talking about, but also this track is going to rubber in. You're going to want to be out there last, but if everybody has that same idea, then it's just not going to work.
Yeah, if you meet, especially for the LMP2s, if you meet a GTE in the wrong place, you're going to lose more time than the extra couple of tenths from the rubber getting better towards the end of the session. So I wouldn't be surprised if lots of these teams, if they actually get a really good lap now that they can't beat for maybe 20 minutes towards the end of the session. This first lap is going to be really the first and probably only lap that they're going to get that's going to be absolutely clear, because they won't have caught up with the GTEs by that point. So this is a very important factor as well, and you are not allowed to press escape on the track. You have to return to the pit lane, which means that a lot of these teams are going to especially if they're doing one-lap runs, there's going to be quite a lot of time. It's going to take about 11 minutes or so to do one quali lap. So even in 45 minutes, there isn't a lot of time to get your lap in. And now we see here Jordi Zwijs coming across the line to start his one. And he's following undercover, and he actually isn't too far behind. So you would assume this car to be a bit quicker. And if he's not too careful, by the end of the lap, he might actually be losing time behind that undercover LMP2.
Yeah, maybe, but you could also get a slipstream. There's silver lining to every cloud, as the saying goes. But yeah, it's probably not the best idea to be this close to the car in front. We'll see how it develops, though. Let's just tell you about a couple of the drivers who are actually out there at the moment for these teams. So as you've already mentioned, Jordi Suarez is driving for Ajira. In terms of the Varga Sim Racing car, it's Marcel Cincic who's going to be qualifying that car here tonight. Michi Hoyer is going to be driving the 49 Burst Esports Simplexity car. The guys who were leading in the final hour at Spa before a penalty cruelly took that away from them, and some team orders, I guess, as well. That victory went to Burst Edge Esports, who are being driven by Dennis Jordan in this one. Didn't make an appearance at Spa, but he's back for this one. In terms of other competitive teams that we're expecting to do well, Wanako driven by Nico Barkley here today, Roman Yakubovic for Blackhawk, and Zanchu got Matt Richards, David Kolotsai for Ground Effect. Lots of different cars that you could almost pick out of a hat, really, with regards to who you think is going to take Poland in GTE. John Lacey have got Kasper Stoltz driving their car. Waveframe number 99 is Christian Malclera driving that car, and their other car, I can't find them for the moment, so we'll have to hold that thought. Naito Velix are being driven by Turka Hakkinen, the number 60. Andrea Riccelli, by the way, is doing the other Waveframe esports car, and the other championship contender, the Varga Sim Racing GTE car, I think is going to be driven by, I'll try and find them for the moment, but I can't. So that's a great start. But they're driven by Michal Sedlacek, just found them. So yeah, there they are. There's the main drivers that we're going to be looking at for. Maybe someone's going to surprise us with this session. But what Cam was mentioning there has kind of happened at the moment. Jordi Reyes has got right onto the back of this undercover sim racing car, and that's not really great for you. He has managed to get through going into Indianapolis here, Neil, but you can't imagine that has helped his lap time too much. He would rather have had a bit of free track space to himself, really, and had the track to himself, but that's not the case. He may well have been slowed up and lost a couple of attempts in because he's had to follow another car, basically.
Yeah, Indianapolis is another one of these sections of the track where it's incredibly fast, and there really is only one line, especially with these LMP2s, because they are right on edge. They're full throttle through that right-handed kink just before Indianapolis corner itself, and that means it's got a very, very short braking zone. And it also means if you want to try and pass someone at Indianapolis, it's really going to compromise both of your lap times greatly. Now that isn't much of a problem during the 24-hour race next weekend, but here in qualifying you need to get into that top 6.
Yeah, absolutely. Top 6 go through into Hyperpole. That counts for both classes, by the way, not just overall. So we're going to see 12 drivers and cars out there a little bit later on, but still 38 minutes left of the first part of qualifying here. It's a long lap, so we've got a long session going on here, 45 minutes to determine that top 6 that we're talking about as Jordi Tevez flies through the final chicane. I must say, it looks like he was really ragging the car through there, coming over the line to set the first lap time of the day. It's a 3-minute 23.6 with Wanako Nico Barkley coming in a fair way slower than that. Roman Yakubovic coming in home second at the right. Luca D'Amelio slips in there as well with Burst Esports first time of the day. Michi Hoyer with a 3:24.0, which is not a bad start from him as we look at Kasper Stoltz heading his way towards the Mulsanne corner at the moment. Right-hander that will set him up all the way for the run down to Indianapolis, but the pace early on here can be set by Jordi Suarez. It's not important to be at the top right now, I guess, but if nobody else can find a clear run of traffic throughout the rest of this session, then they're going to be in a great place, because Marcel Cincic in third place. We'll just have to wait to see how the track develops, really, and how easy it is to actually get a clear lap in this one.
Yeah, the clear lap is going to be very important indeed, and that is a very good lap. I can tell you. I don't think we're going to, at least from what I have been seen and been told, I don't think we're really going to be able to see a 22 unless you get the absolutely perfect lap with some slipstream. But I think a low 23 is going to be a very good time. So to already do a 23.6 when there's no rubber down and that sort of thing, and also being held up a little bit into Mulsanne corner, I think that's going to be a very good lap for Jordi. Obviously got a bit of slipstream as well, but yeah, I think this is going to be quite a difficult lap to beat. And as you see, Varga probably been the fastest team overall during the season, and they're already 7/10 off on that first lap, so that's going to be quite a big mountain to climb, I think.
Yeah, they come in as championship leaders, 5 points in front of Burst Esport. That is the number 29, not 29, excuse me. It is 20. Yeah, thank you. 28 in this one. 49 is the car I'm getting confused with. But yeah, those two are the championship rivals really in this one. Nobody else can win it from here with just one race remaining. So yeah, it's basically between those two, but only 5 points separate them, which makes things very, very exciting indeed. But the first GTE times have come in, as you can see on your screens right now. Christian Marclera is setting the pace right now. We're looking at Casper Stoltz, though. This is for John Lacey Esports in the Aston Martin. He was a little bit further behind some of the others as he was starting a lap time. He's just slotted himself into second place, just 2 tenths behind Marclera. Henry Sinek is currently in third for Satellite Racing. Nigel Velix in fourth ahead of Blackhawk Racing. The other championship contender, we've already seen Nigel Velix and Waveframe up there, but the other championship contenders, Varga Sim Racing, haven't set a lap time yet. Michal Sedlacek is still out there and didn't get one in on the first attempt. That could prove costly for him, but if you look at the track map right now, you can see all of the GTEs lined up together here, Neil, which is kind of helping everybody. But it's in the next few moments of the session where traffic is really going to get mixed up. But you know, not having that banker on the board, I think, is not great for Varga Sim Racing, because you know it just kind of settles the nerves a little bit in this session. You know you've got a lap time on there, and so you can kind of relax and push on a little bit in the session. But when you haven't got it straight away, your first lap is kind of not a lap really. It hasn't counted. It just kind of set in a few nerves, I think.
Yes, indeed, that Varga Sim Sports car at least wants to get into that top 6, because having a look at the standings, at least in LMP2, it is only Varga and Burst who can win the championship. And as you said a couple of minutes ago, a 5-point gap between the two of them. And essentially, it's just a shootout for the championship between those two. In terms of GTEs, you've got 5 cars that are in contention. The 60 Citroën Nitro Velix, the 99 Waveframe Esports, and the 69 Varga Sim Racing car. They're separated by 9 points. It's an incredibly close battle in the GTEs, and a little bit more of your outside bets, if you like. And number 74, Juice's Motorsport Club, currently 32 points behind the leader, and then the 87 Zanshow, 43 points behind the leader. You've got to remember there is only 45 available for a win. So for Zanshow, they need to win to even have a chance of having a hand on that title. And in terms for Juices, they need to finish on the podium to even have a chance.
Yeah, and that's, you know, things have really got to go their way, haven't they, really, for the championship to be theirs. Yeah, if you want a long shot, then you want to be looking at those guys. But yeah, it's a real outside shot that they've got. Juice's Motorsport Club have got João Barbosa driving their car for this qualifying session. He's slotted himself into 10th place in the GTE standings at the moment. 1.5 seconds off of the pace being set by Christian Marclera at the front of the field. And the other kind of long shot in terms of the championship, the 87 Zanshow car, hasn't even set a lap time yet. But let's not forget, Cam, that they absolutely dominated this event this time last year. They got pole, and then they won the race from pole. It was really, really impressive from Zanshow to end off what was a really impressive season, actually.
Yeah, it was. It was quite a show as well, because at one point when they had sort of all their cars in a line as well, there was some great pictures being taken from that one. So it's obviously the seasons have sort of swung, and you know there are other teams fighting now, but certainly there are some good teams that have progressed throughout the season, and one is this one we are looking at now, rFactor Sim Racing. This team unfortunately missed out on Division 1 with an LMP2 earlier on in the season when that happened, but they worked their way up, and now with the 339 car, they've managed to get themselves in Division 1 for Le Mans, because we did have a relegation promotion after the previous race. So they are here now, currently sitting there in that 8th position. So they still got a little bit of a way, but they're still showing that they are up with the big boys, because they're beating some teams that have been around for quite a while, such as Wanako and DX Droids.
Just watched Anthony Jans enter the Porsche curves there, absolutely sideways, and that's not the best way you really want to be going through there. He's driving for Team Spirit Racing at the moment, down in 17th in LMP2, because he's one of the 4 teams so far not to have actually set a lap time. We do have 13 on the board, the last of them Burst Esport, Hungary.dk and João Pites at the moment, 13th position for him, but we're still waiting from 4 times from a couple of these drivers, and Anthony Jans is one of them. He's about to come across the line right now, but here is Mario Tump for Your Name Here Racing, heading into Indianapolis. Could be one of those classic mistakes. It is exactly one of those classic mistakes. A hard hit on the wall as well there, Neil. A corner where you can really get things wrong, and we've just seen a perfect demonstration of how things can go wrong there.
There are many, many corners around the circuit where things can go disastrously wrong. And that indeed is just one of them, as you said. And because it takes so long to get back to the pits, well, presuming that they are going to get back to the pits, because of course, if you don't and you press escape, it's a 10-minute penalty of you just sitting in your pit box, unable to do anything. And as you said earlier, it was about 11 minutes for an out lap, a hot lap, and an in lap. That's one of possibly only 4 or 5 laps that you're going to get in the session gone just due to the time penalty, as well as the one that you crashed on. It has a massive effect on how many laps you can get in the session.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very good point. If we mentioned at the start, Cam said it, you can't escape if you just want to, get back to the pit lane quickly. However, if it's necessary because of damage, then you do have to wait 10 minutes, which, as you mentioned, Neil, was very, very costly at a circuit like this one. It might not cost you so much at other circuits, but this is Le Mans after all, and a very, very long time getting around here and then back again and then out again. It's going to take... It's going to take something out of those guys. The 391 car still in the pit lane. They're the only car in the pit lane right now because we have the second round of times just beginning. We're watching Jordi Svias, who was fastest over the first round of times with a 23.6. Cam was already saying what an impressive lap time that is. Mick Hoyer 3 tenths behind, with Marcel Cintic at a further 4 tenths behind, and then it's another 3 tenths to Moritz Mel and 1 tenth to Luca De Melio. Gets a little bit more clumped up in the mid part of this field, but no, that's for Ajira so far. It's a shame that those guys weren't really able to put a championship charge together here, because they did have a good start to the season, but I'm afraid it's been all about Varga and Burst this season here, Cam. It's somewhat of a surprise to see that it's not all Varga and Burst on the front row right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't think who's in that car at the moment? Dennis Jordan for Burst Edge Esports. I don't think he got the best lap in, doing a 25.5. That's a good 2 seconds off what we're going to be seeing that car doing. I wouldn't be surprised. So that is just how things work out sometimes, as we mentioned already. And as we come on to this second round, Zvaya's already going purple in that first sector. And someone who was also going purple on the previous lap was Renz Klopp for Waveframe Esports and in their LMP2, and they were actually doing a very good job in the second and third sector. They lost all of it in that first sector, so they're currently 9th, 1.4 seconds off the pole, but that was all lost in that first sector. So it's interesting how those sectors are split up at this track, where sector 1 is basically the first sort of sequence of corners that's like a normal Grand Prix track. Then sector 2 is basically the whole Mulsanne, where it's just straight line speed. And then sector 3 is obviously all the fast corners at the end of the lap. So they're 3 really different sectors, and interesting to see that is sort of being different with certain cars. As once again, Svias is getting a slipstream there off undercover. So they're obviously going out at very similar times.
Yeah, they are. I wonder if that's maybe planned for those guys to maybe get a bit of slipstream off of each other at some point. I know that in some places that's even banned for doing that, but it seems that those guys are finding each other fairly often. But just heading out, and it doesn't seem to have done Zvias any good, actually. He's not done a particularly good middle sector right now, but we'll see what his final one is going to be like. We've got a lot of LMP2 times about to actually come across the line right now. Moritz Mel is going to be the first of them, with Rory McDuff, who was in front of all of these guys for Nigel Velix in the LMP2. He's actually right within a lot of GTE cars, so I'm surprised he managed to find a clear bit of road, actually. But he clearly did, and he's put it to very good effect, getting himself into third place, just in front of Marcel Cintic, who we'll watch in a moment. But Moritz Mel is going to be the first one of this kind of second round of times we're seeing right now, with 27 minutes still on the clock. What's the time going to be for him? It's an improvement for the Go Team Racing, and they now sucked up into fourth position, a 24.3. Mick Hoyer slightly improves as well, but he can't quite touch Jordi Svias, who's coming over the line right now as well, and he can't improve himself. So it seems that time was so good here, Neil, that Svias is having trouble beating his own time.
Again, this is something, well, you said about a banker lap before. Sometimes a banker lap can actually be faster, because at that point, you're almost not putting pressure on yourself to go faster, because you just want to get a lap time in. And sometimes you then go trying chasing the tenths of seconds, and because you're trying to, say, go a little bit deeper into one of the Mulsanne chicanes, for example, you try to get a little bit deeper to try and gain a little bit of time, but then you might not get a good run through the chicane, and of course, if you don't get as good as run, it has massive effects because it'll just lengthen the straights between the chicanes. So again, the banker lap is sometimes the fastest just because you don't put that same pressure on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's there's going to be a lot of pressure on all of these guys in about 25 minutes' time. To be fair, it's going to be very, very busy out there. But the GTE times are, or have come in the last few moments. Actually, we've got Zancho now leading that category with the 68 Waveframe Esports car of Andrea Bocelli. That is not the car we're watching right now, and that's not the car involved in the championship fight either. This is the car that can very well win the championship in 8 days' time when we finish the 24 hours of Le Mans. They come into the day only 7 points behind Nigel Velix, who at the moment are not having the best qualifying. They're down in 8th place with Turka Hakkinen driving that car. Also getting up the order in the last few moments, Michal Sedlacek has put in a 48.2, but Ibrahim Khan at the moment is leading GTE Cam at 47.3. That's 8 tenths quicker than everybody else, and that is a huge margin. Really, really a lot bigger than what I was expecting to see at the start of the day.
Yeah, it seems maybe they have quite a bit of an advantage, to be honest, because the gaps behind Wayframe there in second are really, really close. Only a few hundredths between those next 3 cars. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Zancho and in that Corvette they do something pretty crazy, because I believe it was last time out in Spa that they sort of ran away with things in terms of the speed as well. So they're obviously very comfortable. They've got used to this car over the course of the season. And the Corvette is certainly looking to be one of the better cars now as we get towards the end of the season. And it is quite interesting to see such a big gap. But yeah, that is going to be quite an important factor for them. They are sort of way out of it in terms of the championship. I mean, Neil mentioned earlier they are at least capable, but I'm just checking the points. The number 99, 7 points behind. And what is the difference between first and second in the race next week? 7 points. So if they finish 1 and 2, then they would be equaled on points.
Yeah, we're going to have some serious tiebreaker maths going on by come Sunday, and that's not something you really want to be doing after 24 hours, but either way, it could get very, very exciting indeed. Very much looking forward to it as we look at Casper Stolz going through Maison Blanche at the moment and into the final few chicanes, left and right, and then left and right again. Before finishing his lap. Currently down in 7th place with a 48.4. That put him into 2nd place at the time, but he's since dropped down to 7th with various times coming in. But he's back up to 2nd again with a 47.8. That is half a second away from where Zancho are at the moment. So still a big margin between Ibrahim Khan and the rest, but not quite as big as before. Casper Stolz just bringing that down ever so slightly. We keep saying that qualifying is, well, we're acting like, this is a very important session, and to a degree I reckon that it is here, because in the season 12, which we had this time last year, we had this hyperpole format going on for the 3 classes, Hypercar, LMP2 and GTE. No team in the 24 Hours of Le Mans won the race from a place that was lower than 5th. Hydra Racing won the LMP2 race that year, or last year, and they started from 5th place. In the other classes, they were, I believe, at least on the front row. So, we say that qualifying is not very important in a 24-hour race quite often, but I would argue that it is fairly important, because history has shown us, at least last year, Neil, that, you do need to at least be on the first couple of rows.
Yes, every point count, as you said. And having look, you said if they came first and second, the Nigel Velix and Wade from Esports would then be tied on points. At that point, I believe Nigel Velix would take it because they would have 2 wins as opposed to Waveframe's 1. So, yes, it appears that Waveframe actually needs to beat Nigel Velix on points in order to be able to have a shot at that championship. But then you've got Vargas Sim Racing as well. You look behind, and they've got 1 win to their name as well. So if Vargas Sim Racing win, that puts another spanner in the works as to how that point situation works out at the top of the GT standings.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very complicated, but very, very exciting indeed. Absolutely can't wait to see how that battle unfolds between those 3 teams especially. There are, as Neil mentioned earlier, 5 teams mathematically possible of, or capable, should I say, of winning the title. But only 3 seem likely at this point, as the number 272 Black Hawk Racing car just comes over the line right now, and that's 8th place for Moza Ben Ammar with a 48.4, and he's not very far away from Turkka Hakkinen right in front of him. So yeah, it's very, very close indeed. We'll go up a little bit further to Rens Klopp here, driving the number 26 Wave Free Sports car. Now, this team, they're quite a way away in the championship, not able to win it, but this time last year, they were setting up for a real championship charge. They were right involved in that fight, and so, I think, Cam, they might be a little bit disappointed with how season 13 has gone. Obviously, they're going to want to round things off with a win here at Le Mans, but considering how well they did last season, I think they might be a little bit disappointed to be not even challenging for the title again in season 13.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. That just shows you really how competitive it has been, especially in the LMP2s. We did have the merger halfway through the season with the McLaren Senners joining the LMP2s as well, so that obviously increased the skill level for basically putting 2 classes worth of top teams all into one as well, so that's made it even more difficult. But I think just in general they've just struggled a tiny bit. They are still looking in a fairly decent position in the championship in 3rd, but they are such a way behind the Varga and Burst cars that they've obviously just struggled to get on the pace. I think Varga and Burst, though, have easily been the best teams, at least so far, that maybe not quite yet in this qualifying session. But I do think over the course of the season, they really have been the standout ones. And when you've got 2 teams who are literally 1st and 2nd every single race, with a couple of exceptions here and there, it is so difficult to get on top of that. But still, 3rd in the championship would be a fairly nice result for them.
Yeah, one of those exceptions that you mentioned was last month's race at Spa, which was an absolutely fantastic finish to that one, with Varga Sim Racing leading for a very, very long time. But in the end, they came up short with a couple of issues on their end. And it all fell apart for them, giving us this fantastic title fight, which we are going to see. But Dennis Jordan right now in the number 28 car for Burst Edge Esports is currently in 5th position. Those guys are a little bit further, as you just mentioned, Cam, a little bit further away from where we were expecting them. We've seen it Varga versus Burst this entire season, really, and nobody else has really been able to get involved. So what's your assessment of Burst Edge Esports so far here, Neil? Being down in 5th place, are they going to be a little bit concerned with the pace that they have right now, or are they just going to be pleased to be in the top 6?
With this sort of qualifying session, it doesn't matter how fast you are, as long as it doesn't matter what the gaps are, just as long as you are in that top 6. He said the Wave Free Esports car, they're in 5th place. They've still got a buffer. They still have to get beaten by 2 other cars, before they get bumped out of that top 6. So, that just gives them a little bit of breathing room as it stands.
Yes, that is very true. Top 6 is what we're all focusing on for Hypercar, of course. Just 18 minutes to go in this qualifying session. We've ticked over halfway about 5 minutes ago, and these guys now are really going to be wringing the neck of these cars. Varga Sim Racing in the lead of the LMP2 Championship, currently down in 8th place in this session right now. I believe LMP2 cars are mostly starting more laps, but because LMP2 cars are slightly faster than GTE ones, obviously, it's getting so that they're kind of catching the back of the GTE train. They were going out in separate trains the entire time, but now traffic is becoming a little bit easier to come by here, and this could mean a couple of ruined laps. Of course, you don't want to be getting in the way of cars on purpose, but often these GT cars are not doing that. They're just running their own race, and it just so happens that they are in the way. So it's a very, very difficult place to be, really, for everybody here, because we're mentioning qualifying all the time. You don't want to get in the way of people. It's not, you get penalties for it and things like that. You don't want to be doing it. However, it's really hard to not be in the way when you're on a when you're in a GT car here, Cam, and you're on a lap yourself. I find it a strange dynamic, actually, and I would find it very, very strange to be kind of driving on a lap, but also feeling like worrying about people behind at the same time. It's a very strange feeling.
Especially during qualifying, because in qualifying you're just fully focused on the next apex, on the next braking point, and that's all you really want to think about, especially for the GTs, as you're mentioning. You don't want to see an LMP2 coming up behind you, flashing its lights and all this sort of stuff. And during the season we had individual class qualifying, so we had 20 minutes for the GTEs, then we had following 20 minutes for the LMP2s. So now where they're all together, it's going to be quite an interesting sequence, especially through this section of corners that we see Dennis Jordan now. On this lap, he's had no GTEs. He does have some cars coming up there as he comes towards the Ford chicanes. He's on a very good lap, going purple in the first sector and doing a fairly good job in that middle sector as well. So hopefully this GTE doesn't hold him up too much in this final chicane. It looks like that one move is going to get out the way. So can Dennis Jordan put himself up to challenge, maybe even on the front row of the grid? He's going to do a 24.1, third place for now, but only 4/10 off. So that is a pretty good lap to do with only 15 minutes left, but Chinchik's following him.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcel Chinchik coming through the Porsche curves right now. Purple in Sector 1 and improving on his own time in the middle sector as well. Got the Sim Racing for Holland car in front of him into the Ford chicane, flashing his lights vigorously here. And he has managed to get that Corvette out of his way because those guys were on a lin lap very helpfully for the championship leaders. It's not been a good qualifying session for these guys so far. However, he could just turn it on his head here. Marcel Chinchik over the line right now, and he goes to the front with a 23.6. He's just 300ths in front of Ajira Racing, but that's an impressive time. They're back to where we were expecting them to be. 15 minutes to go. The extra traffic and things not phasing Marcel Chinchik and nearly showing to us that that team has not gone anywhere. Those guys have definitely still got it. Watching Turka Hakkinen at the moment as well, going into the Mulsanne corner in the Corvette, but not improving at the moment in the middle sector. Those guys 7th place. We keep saying the top 6 that you need to get into the next part of qualifying, and at the moment he's missing out by just over a tenth to the Drive Game Seat car. So very close in GT. Other than at the front, they're battling for those top 6 places. It's very, very difficult indeed. But you get the feeling here, Cam, that all of these championship contenders are going to, well, firstly want to be in the top 6, but I feel like it's almost necessary if you want to kind of be a race-winning challenger. We haven't seen, as I mentioned, last year, nobody outside of the top 5 was able to win the race. So I feel like for these championship contenders like Nitro Belix, it's necessary for them to be inside the top 6.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about your actual starting position, I don't think, but this is just a good reference for the general race pace, because for the most part, if you're going to be sort of the top 5 in quali pace, you're still not then going to be in the bottom 5 of race pace. So even if your race pace is slightly slower compared to the other people, you're still going to be near the front. So I think this is just a good gauge to work out who the fast people are, who may be struggling just a little bit. And it is interesting if any of these sort of bigger teams don't get into that hyperpole, because all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, wow, where are they actually going to be next week during the race? They're going to be struggling. I don't think the specific starting position matters too much, apart from maybe the first stint. All that is way too far off. I doubt he's going to be making an improvement with that, and he doesn't. He loses a few extra tenths in that final sector. But yeah, I don't think, starting from, say, 8th place is really too big a deal. I think you can still win the race, but you're definitely going to lose a bit of time in those first couple of stints. Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be caught up in traffic that is a little bit slower than you, so you'd like to avoid that, really. But that's a matter for a little bit later on. Sean Jacobs goes into the pit lane, the unorthodox route over the gravel at the moment. Charles Barbosa is just leaving the pit lane for Deuces Motorsport Club. Those guys in 12th place at the moment actually can win the championship this next weekend, but unlikely to do so. They're down in 12th at the moment, and not many of the Porsches are actually up there right now. We've got Vargas Sim Racing in 5th, but we've got a great range of manufacturers going on at the moment inside of the top 6 places. We've got Corvette with Zancho, the number 87, John Lacey Esports, the Aston Martin, 2 Waveframe Ferraris in 3rd and 4th, Vargas Sim Racing in their Porsche, also Drive Game Seat are in a Porsche as well. So it's great to see that inside of the top 6 right now, Neil, we have a good amount of manufacturers, as Casper Stotz right now is on our screens heading through Indianapolis. Purple in Sector 1, purple in Sector 2. But as you can see by those numbers just above the little purple lines that you can see in the bottom right hand side of your screen, it's not a massive improvement. So this might not be a pole time even still for Casper Stotz. He's got to nail the final sector. That's it really. But
arguably here, Neil, the final sector with the Porsche curves, I think personally is the most difficult.
Yes, just because you need to nail that perfect line through the right, the left, the left, the right, and the left, and then the right and the left again. Yeah, you essentially need to nail that incredibly fast line, especially with the safer barrier right there on the outside. As you're having a look at Casper Stoltz, right there on the outside of the left hand, there really is no room for error. And then coming through Corvette corner now is Stoltz, and as you said, purple. You can see it's purple just by a quarter of a tenth and 100th of a second respectively in sectors 1 and 2. Coming down to chicanes to finish the lap. The faster first chicane, followed by a bigger stop for the second, and he's using every single centimetre of road possible. Could that be two wheels in the gravel on the left hand side? I'm not sure. It could have been. And look at that, he lost a lot of time.
He did indeed, 1/10.5 away for Ibrahim Khan's time, which still stands as the best in GTE at the moment with a 47.3. Casper Stoltz with a 47.4 was not able to do enough as we look at Jordi Suarez right now in second place, getting through on a bit of traffic, very smartly actually able to do that. And now, is he going to have clear track space in front of him? He's coming through Tete Rouge right now and he should be okay. I believe he's going to be okay on this lap. He's going to catch it in the correct places. And I think this is going to be pretty good, but he's already lost a couple of attempts in the first sector, so I think he's just going to kind of abandon that one and set himself up for a little bit later on. It just shows here, Cam, though, that mistake from Casper Stoltz. Fine margins separating these guys, and just one mistake through the final chicane may well have lost Casper Stoltz that 10.5 that he needed as we look at Mitty Hoyer, who's also going purple.
Yeah, he lost 0.18 in that final sector compared to his previous time, and he is 0.14 off pole position. That is how close it can be, and also how close it can be is Mitty Hoyer to that barrier. Absolutely sliding the rear as well. Is he going to be able to get this GT? I think he will just be able to get GT before we get to the braking zone. That's going to put him slightly offline, though. He's going to have to come back towards that pit entry, then get it through these couple of chicanes. Very difficult sequence to round out the lap. And does he go a little bit wide? No, keeps it just about within the track limits as he comes to the line. He's going to go to second place there. So getting ahead of Jordi Suarez, only 21 thousandths of a second off pole position as well. So the top three are so close you can barely blink your eye.
Yeah, absolutely. 31 thousandths of a second separating those top three, and we're back to it being Varga versus Burst on the front row. However, it's not the Burst Esports car we were expecting. The Burst Edge Esports car is in fourth position. That's the championship contending car, and they're nearly half a second away at the moment. So a little bit of work to do for those guys. Jordi Suarez right now also improving in the middle sector. A very strange lap going on at the moment, Neil, because a pretty slow first sector, a pretty lightning fast middle sector, so it's really take your pick for what's going to happen here in the final sector. Jordi Suarez is certainly pushing, though, and pushing too hard through Indianapolis.
Yeah, you have a look, the yellow and the purple sectors pretty much balance each other out, so he's on course for provisional first position is Jordi Suarez. Of course, it doesn't really matter because all this session is about is getting into that top six. And just having a look, he may have, well, I think this might be his last lap. I don't think he's got enough time to do an in-lap and then an out-lap again. So I think this might be it for Giro Racing. Is he coming through the Porsche curves, and that's an undercover car. Oh, cutting it fine.
Very, very close. Not where you want to catch a lap car by any stretch of the imagination, but clearly getting themselves on either an in-lap or out-lap, setting them their own race up here. Try not to ruin others as well, as Suarez come through Maison Blanche and in towards the forward chicanes at the end of the lap. Is he going to continue on with this? I believe he is indeed, and this should be the final lap for Jordi Suarez. There's going to be no more time for him to get back round again. He throws it across those curbs almost too aggressively. He comes over the line, and it's not an improvement. I think that could be a case, Cam, maybe even trying a little bit too hard.
Yeah, he on the live timing, he actually has a blank for his last lap, so he might have got a cut track there. As he came out of that final chicane, he went way onto that gravel, and I don't think it would have been quicker anyway. So he is maybe limited to that third place. But remember, this is not, for the top six at least, this is not their qualifying position. They will have that hyper pole where they will be able to change their position potentially as well. So now we're going back to João Barbosa currently a little bit further down from what they wanted. There was a time when Juices were absolutely romping it away during the GTE category, winning the championship a couple of seasons ago now, but they're down there in 13th at the moment, as Dennis Jordan now is putting in a good first sector and even a pretty decent middle sector.
Yeah, not too bad. That would put him right in with those top 3 cars that we're expecting to be the benchmark for this one. This is also going to be a final lap time here with just over 6 minutes to go, and that's one of the challenges at Le Mans, really. You've got to kind of set aside 7 minutes for you to go for an in-lap and then back out again. So, you know, already with 6-7 minutes to go, we're seeing the final lap times for some of these guys. A little bit of traffic up in front here for Dennis Jordan. This is the Varga Sim Racing GTE car, may well be on a lap themselves as we come into Arnage. Indeed, Sedlatech is not on a lap, which is very helpful for Dennis Jordan. Neil, he got a little bit lucky there. He's caught this Aston Martin in the right place as well.
Hopefully he can get past this Aston Martin before he moves up to Porsche Cars. Indeed, he goes around the outside through the left-handed kink. And now is coming this final sector of the lap. And as you can see, that purple and yellow sectors pretty much cancel each other out as we're coming through the Porsche curves up the hill, then diving left, and then coming all the way back down the hill again, changing direction at the same time. The rear end sometimes gets us a little bit unsettled through there. Now coming through Corvette corner. And again, a little bit of a slide, a nice drift coming out of Corvette there. Now through Maison Blanche, and now the final chicanes, left, right, the faster and then the slower. Look at this direction change, absolutely on a penny as we're coming out of the final chicane, using every single centimetre. What is the lap time? It's P1.
Very, very impressive from Dennis Jordan. Not just matching Varga Sim Racing, but actually going past them. But look at this. Marcel Cincic is going pretty fast himself as well. Nearly a quarter of a second up on the best time currently set by Dennis Jordan. Although this final sector, in terms of actually getting a split time on it, is the longest one. We do have to wait quite a long time to find out whether he's still going well or not. But certainly from the first part of the lap here, Cam Cincic is really on form.
Yeah, that 0.2 in the middle sector as well is quite something, considering the middle sector is literally just those 2 chicanes on the back straight pretty much as well. So that is a very good omen to see what he is going to do as we come through this final sector. Dennis Jordan finally putting in a good lap. He was struggling a little bit in the first 30 minutes of the session, but he's really starting to come to now. And those top 4 now within 1/10.5. Can Marcel Cincic do anything to change that and get it towards the pole? I think, looking at how decent that was, I think he might be able to do that.
Yeah, it's looking very, very good right now for the championship leaders to lead another session in the Virtual Endurance Championships 13th season. Here we go into the 4 chicanes one more time. Cincic was leading a little bit earlier. He's had his lead stolen away from him, but he's got it back again, has he? Yes, he has. 0.2 of a second better off than Dennis Jordan. That will easily see him into the top 6. The battle between the rest of them is going to be very, very close indeed, but the 2 championship rivals, Neil, have got themselves in without stress, and that's all this session is about, really. Minimising the amount of stress is pretty much vital, really. You don't need that extra kind of worry. Will I get into the top 6 or not? Well, the championship leaders have already completely sorted that now.
Yes, the top 2 in LMP2, as you said, looking to go into the hyperpole session. In terms of the top 5 in the GTE standings, if I get the correct tab up again, that would be quite helpful. The 87, the 69 are both in the top 6, as well as the 99 as well. So you've got 3 out of the top 5 in the GTE class going into hyperpole session. Nigel Felix is currently on the outside looking in that 7th position. And, Juices Motorsport Club down in 14th at the moment. Xiao Barbosa, perhaps they're just focusing a little bit more on race setup as it stands.
Yeah, quite possibly. That could be the case. Obviously, that's where the points are handed out at the end of the day. At the end of the 24 hours, we will see who are victorious and who have the championship as well. But we're watching Ibrahim Khan, the Zancho number 87 championship contenders. Although very, very long shots. I believe that's the other Zancho car going past them as well, which is a nice photo opportunity for those guys. But down into Mulsanne corner, we're going to get another split time coming up very shortly. And we'll be able to see how Ibrahim Khan is going in the second sector, because it's a very slight advantage that he's got in the first sector. It's a very slight advantage that he's got in the second as well. So he's ever so slightly edging that time away, Cam, and kind of consolidating his spot at the top of the standings at the moment, kind of consolidating his place in the top 6.
Yeah, it's pretty madness, isn't it? Half a second to third place on the grid, and he's looking to go even faster. So Zancho really managed to sort out this Corvette, and Ibrahim Khan especially doing such a good job as he now comes into Indianapolis. This is where many teams over the years have thrown it all away. Such a difficult braking zone there into that left-handed corner. You don't want to go out too wide there, otherwise you will be getting a cut track as well. Then coming through Arnage, once again, you got that wall on the outside if you're having a bit of an issue with the car, but he seems to be going around there really nicely. And as you say, Sector 3 is a long one, but it's going well for him so far.
Yes, absolutely. It looks fairly clean, not trying too hard, which is easy to do around here. Heading into the Porsche curves now, see if how well balanced this Corvette is, because the GTE cars are especially on edge through this section of corners. It's really made for a high downforce car where you can really rely on the aero to glue your car to the road, but the GTE cars don't have quite as much of that. So they do end up sliding a bit like that coming through Corvette. Just a little bit of opposite lock for Ibrahim Khan, but expertly controlled by the man who really spearheaded their drive to the front of the field at Spa, at the 8 Hours of Spa, where they took victory and put them in mathematical contention for this championship. But certainly searching for a pole position at Le Mans right now. A little bit of a clip on the gravel. Goes over the line right now. That's not an improvement for Ibrahim Khan, I'm afraid. It's not even a time, so you get the feeling that he might have just overstepped the mark ever so slightly in the final chicanes there, Neil, which is very easy to do.
Yeah, and speaking of improving time, having a look at the left-hand side, Nitro Velix has got themselves up into 4th and bumped out Drive Game Seat Racing as it stands. We've now got 4 out of the top 5 in the championship in this Hyperpole session. It's just Motorsport Club is the one that is the odd one out, but I'm seeing blue flags, so I think Barbosa is out on the circuit.
Yes, I believe that it is the case, so he might be able to get himself in as well here. A lot of GTE cars are still out there. LMP2s are almost done. We've got a couple of more times to come in. Rookie Monsters just coming into the pit lane at the moment, actually, so they're done for the day. But Moritz, Mel, Roman Yakubic, Matt Richards, all out there at the moment, and we'll see if any of them can get inside of the top 6. But I think most of the action is going to come from GTE in the final moments of this qualifying session, because look at the margins as well. From 5th place down to 10th, it's half a second. Those 6 cars very, very close together. So expect to see a little bit of movement in that particular part of the order. Here's Kasper Stoltz, though. He should be making it through into the top 6, going a little bit faster in the middle sector as well, trying not to go too far over the limit here in the final chicanes. We've seen many before him do that. It looks expertly done from Kasper Stoltz through the final corners. He does improve. 600ths away from Zancho, not quite able to get first place, but Cam, they are easily into the top 6.
Yeah, they are, and remember, that's really what we're focusing on actually for this session. We are seeing who is potentially going to be looking at pole position, but for now it's that 6th, 7th place is what we're looking at. And one potential to do that is this Black Hawk Racing Aston Martin. We've already seen that the Aston Martin is very capable indeed. They're only 60 hundredths of a second in second place there. But now, what can Ben Amar do as he comes towards the final 4 chicanes? He's on a couple of personal bests there at the beginning, and if he gets this just right, he might be able to nick himself into that top 6.
And if he gets into the top 6, he'll bump out the number 69 Varga Sim Racing car. So Varga will have to immediately respond, and that number 69 car is just entering the Porsche curves, so they'll have to immediately respond. This Black Hawk Racing car goes up into 5th, so Varga is bumped as it stands.
Yeah, absolutely. Michał Sedlacek in 7th place, and just a little bit, he's just 300ths missing out right now from Andrea Riccielli, who's also out there on a lap right now, and he's lost it through Corvette. Sedlacek pushing too hard, and Varga Sim Racing are not going to make Hyperpole, I'm afraid. So the guys who are 3rd place in the GTE Championship won't make it. Drive Game Seat are coming through the final corners right now. Can they make the top 6? Yes, they can. 4th place for those guys at the moment, knocking Wave Freem number 68 out at the moment. That's not the championship contending car, but they'll certainly want to make Hyperpole, as well, getting inside the top 6. But goodness me, drama right at the end. Varga Sim Racing spinning around, and it looks like 8th place is the best that they're going to do in this one. Black Hawk Racing with that late lap from Ben Amar. Looks like he's going to make it unless Andrea Riccelli is going any quicker right now. I don't think they're going to make it. So, yeah, big drama right at the very end there, Cam, and Varga Sim Racing. Michal Sedlacek bitterly disappointed with how that's gone, because that spin at Corvette has cost them a good few positions and a chance at getting pole position in the next session.
And look how close it is between that 6th, 7th, only a few thousandths of a second, but that is how close it can be. Very important for these drivers to get themselves into that top 6 if they want to challenge at least. So now what we're going to see is basically those drivers from P7 downwards in each category. There will be no longer during into the qualifying session. So when we go into the hyperpole, it'll just be those top 6 from each class. And so congratulations to those, because they're going to be the ones now fighting for this pole position.
Yeah, absolutely. And who's going to take it? That's the next question. We've got about 10 minutes until we get into the final part of qualifying here. It's going to be a half an hour session for the top 6 in both classes. But I think now we're going to take a quick look at what happened in qualifying and what the results were at the end of the day. And mainly, who are in those top 6 positions, who's going to be making it into the final half an hour for qualifying or not. So in LMP2, both of the championship contending cars did make it. Marcel Chinzik and Dennis Jordan did well enough to get the first 2 spaces that we've seen from those guys so often before. In 3rd place, it was Mitchie Hoyer, so the other Birch Sport car is also there, and Jordi Sviers is as well for Agera Racing. Good drive from him to slot himself nicely into the top 6. And there's Roy McDuff as well with Luca D'Amelio rounding off your top 6. So Neil, no big surprises in that one. Both championship contenders made it, and no big surprises, no big changes at the very end there. So 6 very, very deserving drivers making it through to the final session.
Yes, indeed. And of course, Burst Esports have 2 of their cars in the top 6. So that might help them with a little bit of slipstream in the half-hour hyperpole session. We've got to wait and see what Jordan and Hoya decide to do there. But indeed, Marcel Chinchik is the time currently to beat. But if you have a look, they're so incredibly close. Just 0.3 separating the top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to pick who's going to actually take pole in LMP2. Just missing out, by the way, Go Team Racing. Moritz Mel was only just under 2 tenths behind Luca D'Amelio, so he missed out, I'm afraid, as did Roman Jakubowicz for Blackhawk, Matt Richards for Zancho, and Nico Barkley for Wanako rounding off the top 10. Then Renz Klopp, David Koloksai, Anthony Jans, Juan Carlos Fernandez, João Pitas, and Rick Van and Filippo Verzi all missed out, I'm afraid, in the first part of qualifying. But in GTE, the drivers that did end up making it, Ibrahim Khan for Zancho, Casper Stoltz for John Lacey Esports, and Christian Marcolera. That is the championship contending Waveframe car, by the way, alongside Lorenzo Decutis, Turka Hakkinen, as well as Mosab Ben Amar, who just made it in by 29 thousandths of a second. That's the kind of margins we're talking here, Cam. Waveframe Esports missed out getting their second car in by not even the blink of an eye. It was really, really close.
Yeah, so close indeed. But that is just how, to be honest, how the whole season has gone. There's just been so close between so many of these teams, and it's really nice to see that has carried over to Le Mans as well. Because one thing, when you get to these longer 24-hour races, you don't want the field just to completely spread out during the first sort of 8 hours of the race. I think it's going to stay really close, and I think we're going to be getting a good finish to this season 13.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of the top 30, I'm afraid, both World of Sim Racing cars alongside the Juices Motorsport Club car, who can mathematically clinch the championship next weekend, but not looking likely from 33rd overall, just ahead of Pedro Ramada for Ramada Motorsport. Sim Racing for Holland haven't made it either after their great start to the season, tailing off a little bit, I'm afraid. So some big teams missing out, especially, Neil, Varga Sim Racing, who are coming into the weekend only 9 points behind Nitro Relics at the front of the GTE Championship. Does that position, they're starting P8, they're a little bit further down in the order than where they would like. So does that change their thinking going into this race, or does it stay the same? Do they have to adjust their strategy or their tactics going in now?
Well, anything can happen in endurance racing, and it normally does. So I think at this moment, I think they'll just be waiting to see at least how the first part of the race plays out. Maybe the first 6 hours or so, just see what's happening and just see what the strategies are and just see really what happens before thinking, right, okay, now we have to go on the attack or we can defend a little bit more. Because as you said, 7 points. Excuse me, that's just the gap between first and second.
Yeah, absolutely. It's extremely close in GT and LMP2 as well. So we'll be doing a lot of maths throughout the 24 hours to try and figure out who is winning the respective championships. But now it's all about taking pole position for the 24 hours of Le Mans. 5 minutes, as Jimmy Alice has just mentioned, to Hyperpole beginning. This is where we've come from so far. 9 rounds in the 13th season of the Virtual Endurance Championship, and there have been 8 great rounds so far, and I'm not expecting that to change really at the 24 hours of Le Mans. It's always a classic event, and even though the rain looks like it's stayed away on this occasion, just like clouds for the moment, we never know what can happen. I can't remember what year it was, but a very, very wet Le Mans a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 in the VEC. Not many, I think 4 LMP1 cars finished that race, which is fairly attritional, it has to be said. Might have been a fair time ago now. But yeah, it's all about who's going to take pole from this point here, Cam. And we've got so just a bit of information from Jimmy Allison to the drivers. This session, in my eyes anyway, is very similar to the one we've just had. 45 minutes before, we've got only half an hour now, but less cars on the circuit. Does your change just... Sorry, Jimmy's just talking again. Does that...
How dare he?
Yeah, how dare he? It's not like he's race director or anything. But yeah, Cam, how does these change? Does the thinking change between the two qualifying sessions, between normal qualifying and the hyperpole?
I think, to be honest, I think for the most part it won't change too much. Those guys were doing some very fast lap times indeed, especially those guys in the LMP2 there's maybe another 10th or so left in those lap times, and then I think we're getting really to the limit of what we're able to see. Maybe like a really, really, really low 23. So I think they were already pushing so hard, they were just effectively using that first session as a warm-up, getting themselves in the mood. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see those teams going straight out again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very limited session now, with only 12 drivers actually going to be out there. Yeah, as we get into the session in a moment, we'll just run through you one more time the 12 teams that will be involved. But a fair few teams have missed out, and they're going to be starting towards the back, hopefully with a clean start for all of those guys, and they'll be yeah, hopefully having a good start. But just over 2 minutes now before we get into the hyperpole session. These guys have all secured the top 6 now, and it's just a case of where they're going to be in this session. No team, let's just reiterate from season 12, where we had this hyperpole session. We also had hypercars, but we had the hyperpole format going on. No team won the race from lower than 5th, so the statistics suggest that you do at least want to be inside of that top 5, but maybe in reality it is going to work a little bit differently. We'll wait and see, of course, and with only half an hour in this session, Neil, it does mean that these guys do have slightly less opportunities than before. But 3 laps, we're thinking maybe if you do the out lap, flying lap, in lap kind of cycle, you probably get 3 actual flying laps in this session. So there are limited chances, I guess, for these guys, but it's not really any more limited than the last session was, really. I don't think, as Cam said, I don't think it's too much different, but with only half an hour out there, it is going to be still difficult for you to get your lap times in, and obviously a banker lap is going to be very, very important to get as well. The pressure will be off if you do manage to do that.
Yeah, if we talk about the GTE cars, you can roughly say it's 4 minutes for every lap, be it out lap an in lap and a hot lap. You can roughly say 4 minutes. And of course, being a 30-minute session, that gives them 7.5 laps, which you can obviously round up to 8. And if you take that equation, that lap number 8 will be hot lap number 3. So, as he said, yes, maybe 3 laps for the GTEs. In terms of the LMP2s, I think it might also be only 3 laps for them. I don't think they've got enough time to do an out lap and an in lap with just the speed differential that they have with the GT cars. I think it's only going to be 3 stints for the LMP2s as well.
Bit of a scary warning there from Jimmy Allison before the end of the. I'm just joking. But yes, the drivers who are not inside of the top 6 are now being asked to leave the server so that we can get Hyperpole underway. So then, not too long, and we'll get the outlaps underway now for the Hyperpole session, and 30 minutes will remain, and we'll be able to see who is going to get on pole for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. In LMP2, Varga Sim Racing are going to be on show alongside 2 of the Burst Esport cars. Rookie Monsters stuck in there as well with the top 6 performance from those guys, and Knight of Alex with the number 30 driven by Rory McDuff is going to be here as well. The Ajira Racing number 2 driven by Jordi Zvaez is also going to be there for LMP2. In GTE, it's going to be Jean Lacey Esports, Knight of Alex, Wave Freem Esports, Sancho, Blackhawk Racing and Drive Game Seat all battling it out for the Hyperpole victory. The session is underway. Half an hour is on the clock here, and it's very, very difficult to really pick a winner from this one. I guess personally it's hard to look past Varga Sim Racing, but that's a bit of an obvious choice, really. Do you think we'll see any surprises, especially in LMP2 here, Cam? Do you think we're going to see one of those championship contenders, you know, outside of the front 2 rows? Are we going to see any surprises in that respect?
Yeah, it's difficult to. So the team's just been told about the escape rule, so that is actually going to be quite an important factor. So if you have to press escape because you crash, and then you have to wait 10 minutes in the pit, that could be quite costly. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it's going to be difficult to see outside of the top sort of 2, really, maybe 3 in both categories, with Varga, Burst Edge in LMP2, and then Sancho and Jean Alesi in GT. They're probably going to be the ones to look out for during the session. But the times from the previous session for these 6 or these 12 teams are no longer active or valid, I should say. So this is a completely clean slate. They've got to go out and do those laps again. So there's a fair amount of pressure on this session, considering they're only really going to get in about 3 laps, as we said.
Yeah, absolutely. High pressure on all of these laps right now, as they are on outlaps as things stand. The 49 is going to be the first of them. That's the Burst Esport car, currently driven by Michi Hoyer, as it was in the first stint. All of the drivers are the same, by the way, so no new drivers to actually get used to in this one, but a couple of the drivers, the number 2 and the number 30, that's Ajira Racing and Knight of Alex here, have decided to go a little bit later than everybody else. Now, we know that these guys are pushed for time a little bit, especially the GTE cars, so I guess they can't afford to wait around all day, but yeah, there is still a little bit of time to play with right at the end here. So yeah, it's all 12 of them are out there at the moment. But how badly, Neil, do you think these guys are actually going to want to get pole here? It is fairly symbolic, considering it's a 24-hour race, but Sancho did win from pole last year, so how badly are these guys going to be driving for this?
Not only, well, it's a little bit of prestige as well to show that you have got the fastest car, but also it means that you're ahead of your compatriots in the same class, which means should there be an incident, you obviously have far less chance of being involved in it. So being further up the field is incredibly helpful in that sense.
Yeah, exactly. There's only one thing that can go wrong if you're leading, and you're in total control of that. But you're right, if you're starting back in 40th place, well,
laughing.
That is
no,
that is
sorry.
true. I mean, in turn 1,
especially multi-class racing.
Yes, that is true. But yes, it's certainly a lot easier anyway, starting from the first position, that is for sure. But starting from 40th, as some of these guys are going to be doing when the race rolls around next week. It's a lot more of a difficult challenge. The outlaps then are just about complete, and we're about to get on to the proper laps for real now. And for the 49er, Michi Hoyer is going to be leading them around, currently going around the first chicane, going through the first sector. We're going to get some sector times in a few moments' time, but Michi Hoyer is out there first. There's going to be a pretty mad dash, really, for the last times here a little bit later on, Cam. We saw in that last session that the track was rubbering in quite nicely, actually, and you did get a fair benefit from actually running out last. Marcel Cinczyk was able to take advantage of that, topping the LMP2 session last time, so it is going to get busy towards the end.
Yes, certainly is. And being there at the end is going to be important regarding the rubber down on the track. The rubber is obviously still down on the track from the previous session, so there won't be any sort of major increase, but there will still be that last little bit, those last few hundredths of a second as we get towards the final part of this 30-minute qualifying session. And with only 12 cars on the track as well, it's not going to improve loads, but that might be the little bit that you need for being that last car out on the track. But at least for now, Cinczyk, for instance, the driver in the car at the moment, he is going to be trying to do the best he can right now. There's no reason to sandbag. There's no reason to take pressure off yourself for this lap. You've just got to go out there and try and set your lap down, because you don't know when you're going to get traffic or if you're going to make a mistake later on in the session.
Yeah, there is certainly a lot less traffic out there at the moment. It's free track space for most of these guys, actually. So yeah, it's kind of head down and just do the best that you can. At the moment, in the bottom right-hand side, you can see Cinczyk has got a purple first sector, but we don't know quite how much by, because this is the first lap time of the day. Seemingly going purple in the second one as well, but there's only one car in front, so it doesn't count for too much at the moment. It doesn't seem like those behind are improving by very much, but still, they've got times a little bit later on to set. Going into Indianapolis at the moment, Hoyer first, and then Cinczyk, as we watch him right now, diving into the right-hander, using the camber of the turn to get yourself to the right-hand side for the left-hander, which is also banked so that you can run through a little bit quicker. As Rory McDuff here, interestingly, and this is a good point, because he is a little bit further behind than the rest of them. He's decided that he wants to go out a little bit later. He's not going to encounter any traffic on this lap. However, these guys haven't got all the time in the world to play with here, Neil. He's about 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes behind the rest of them out there on the circuit. So, he's running it a little bit tight for time at the moment, but clearly didn't want to get involved in the mad dash that everybody else got involved with a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, that mad dash, as he's saying, because as you correctly said before, an out lap, a hot lap, and in lap is roughly 11 minutes for the LMP2s, and that means if you really did rush, push the entire time, you can maybe squeeze out an extra hot lap at the very end of the session. Because this is 15 minutes shorter, obviously that's about 1.5 cents shorter, which means that you don't really have the time or the ability to push for that extra hot lap in the time. So because of that, you can maybe wait 60 seconds or so and really wait for that gap in the traffic in order to make sure that you have a clean run.
Yeah, it looks like Rory McDuff has done that fairly successfully, and Marcel Cincyk's first lap has been fairly successful as well, to be fair, with a 23.5. That is a good 6 tenths quicker, nearly 5.5 tenths quicker than what the rest of them have been able to do. But Michi Hoyer came in the pit lane there. Interesting to see why he would have done that, because we don't believe he's going to be able to get another lap in, although maybe he'll just about have time. Still interesting to see him abort his first lap.
Yes, something was obviously not right. He wasn't feeling comfortable. It is weird because he was already on his out lap, so there must have been something go wrong, a reason for him to not start the lap at all. Bit of a weird one, but let's first see what is Khan going to do. He's going to do a 47 flat, so that is a fairly nice time to do for his first lap indeed, and so far they are looking way ahead of the cars behind them at the moment by over a second there to the nicer Velux. So they need to try and find some time there. But yeah, a bit of a weird one to pit at the end of the out lap. So I don't know, maybe he had a spin, maybe he locked up or something. Yeah, a bit strange to see him pit so soon.
Casper Stoltz and Christian Marglera, by the way, also into the pit lane from GTE, but coming over the line right now, Moussa Ben Ammar for Black Hawk Racing, and that's an outlap for those guys. That's not going to count for them. Coming over the line, they're Roy McDuff just in the background, not too far away from Vargas Sim Racing whatsoever. So about half of the drivers have been able to get times in here, top 7, but the drive game time of a 3 minutes 53 is not quite competitive, but I think, Neil, it just shows how hard these guys are pushing, really, the fact that only half of them were really able to get a respectable lap time in.
Yeah, they really are looking for every single tenth of a second. But I suppose there's a little bit less jeopardy in this session, because you're guaranteed to start at least 6th. So, that takes a little bit of pressure off, because beforehand, if you made a mistake, you could start, 18th, 20th in class. But because you've now got that floor of position, it just allows you to push that a little bit more.
Yeah, just to give you that little bit of confidence, I guess, to really push as hard as possible. Lots of outlaps for the LMP2s at the moment. Ajira and Nigel Alex both just behind Ben Ammar at the moment, but I believe he's on an in-lap right now. So, yeah, not many guys actually are on proper laps right now. Michi Hoyer is just coming up towards the Porsche curves right now. Cam, what have you seen?
Well, just Jordi's visor having to cut through the middle of those couple of cars. Not ideal to do that, obviously, when you're trying to get yourself some space. It's looking a little bit congested on this back straight, as there's now trying to get past the Jonna Lacey car as well. Obviously, Jordi being actually part of Jonna Lacey, but their Senna got sort of disbanded, so he then moved to Ajira, but he's still part of Jonna Lacey there. So interesting that Stolzer is moving out the way for his effectively his teammate. But I believe Ben Ammar is actually on a lap, because when we caught him a couple of minutes ago, he was on his out lap. So I do believe this is a lap for him as he's coming towards the end of the second sector, and it's going to be right as we get to the apex of this corner, and you see he's doing another green, so he's obviously on his first attempt, so it's a bit hard to judge from the time so far.
Yeah, especially hard to judge because that's a gap to the overall time, by the way, which is why you're seeing him nearly 10 seconds down after 2 sectors. Turka Hakkinen also on a lap right now. He is in the Porsche curves and he's a championship contender, let's not forget, currently championship leader. Actually, we've already dispatched one of them, Vargas Sim Racing, not able to make it into Hyperpole, so Night Developers are going to want to put as much distance between them and their rivals as possible. That's quite a big slide coming through Corvette at the moment, not as big as the slide that Michal Sedlacek had at the end of the first qualifying session, but still had to be controlled. He's currently 1.5 seconds down on Ibrahim Khan after the first round of times, and he's coming up for another one right now, bouncing across the forward chicanes, and that might well have been over the mark there. We'll wait and see as he comes over the line. He does actually get the lap time in, but I'm afraid that is not really an improvement. 1.7 seconds down on that occasion, so I guess that just puts into perspective how good Ibrahim Khan's time was there, Neil. Turka Hakkinen was really throwing that car across the curb, but it still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, throwing that car everywhere. And again, that's really what you are doing in this session, again, because of that floor of position that you have. But yes, it's just seeing the car bounce across the curbs is incredible. Like what, almost it's like a Dakar rally raid car, but the fact that it's just on a street circuit.
Yeah, it's very, very strange to see almost, but yeah, it's quite spectacular as Moussa Ben Ammar comes over the line right now, jumps up into 3rd place in the GTE category, but Michi Hoyer right now going fairly quickly as things stand, just half a tenth in front of Vargas Sim Racing after the first sector, getting through on the Rookie Monsters car, which is currently on an outlap. But yeah, this has been an impressive drive so far from Michi Hoyer here. Cammy, he put in an impressive performance at the 8 Hours of Spa as well. He was hoping for a 2nd place, a late penalty put paid to that one, I'm afraid, but yeah, it was a very dramatic finish and a very good drive, nevertheless, from Michi Hoyer, because after all of the issues, he found himself in the lead by nearly a lap, actually, before he had to give it up to his teammates. So it was an impressive drive from that team last time out.
Yeah, it certainly was. And Michi Hoyer, he's had such a good beginning of 2021 as well, and other competitions doing really well. He's really starting to get on top of his driving, and that is really nice to see as he's coming now into Indianapolis. Such a difficult corner, although he is a bit down actually in that middle sector, so he needs to do something good to at least get himself onto that front row. Goes a bit wide there, Narnage, though, so not really using the best line in general, and it looks like he's at least doing a fairly decent lap. Whether there'll be enough pole position, I don't believe so. But it's quite funny. Before the session, he was saying that the best he could do was a 24.5, and he's now going basically a second a lap quicker than that. Maybe at least not on this lap, but he's pushing it right to the limit.
He absolutely is, almost all four wheels off the circuit going through that right-hander there, but he did just about keep it on. Yeah, not the cleanest run through the Porsche curves on this occasion, and very wide through Corvette. Yeah, Hoyer not quite getting things together here in Hyperpole. Just over 15 minutes to go in the session, and he comes into the pit lane once again here. So Neil, this session not going quite as well as they would want, but they are in good company. Algira Racing haven't set a lap time yet either, so I guess they can take a slight bit of comfort from that.
Yeah, a little bit of comfort taken, and only 4 cars from each class have actually set a lap time at the moment. But yes, look at that. It's Vars again. It's very, very wide on the exit of Indianapolis, running all 4 wheels through the gravel on the exit, and that's not very conducive to lap time.
No, we saw him do that before, didn't we, in the first part of qualifying, pushing very, very hard through that corner and all of the corners you might expect, and yeah, he's just overstepping what that car can do on a couple of occasions, just overdriving maybe in a couple of places, but yeah, flying through the Porsche curves right now. 3.5 tenths down at the second sector split. That one is taken just after the Mulsanne corner, so a long time between then and the finish line, as he comes through Corvette right now and through the little shimmy at Maison Blanche, and before the final couple of chicanes. This time may well set him up with a top 3, maybe a top 4, because the Rookie Monsters time from Luca D'Amelio is not quite as competitive as I was expecting so far. I expect them to do a little bit better later on, but bouncing across the curves he goes again. It is 4th place for Jordi Zvaez. You get the feeling, Cam, that is not the limit of what that car can do. He's 6 tenths down at the moment.
Yeah, you'd certainly expect there to be some faster... Well, we saw faster times in that previous session, but this one, there's just that little bit more pressure on it. There's less time, you got less laps, and this is really where it counts. As we said, those laps previously from the first session for these teams are gone. They need to replicate them in this session, and that is ever so more difficult when you know this is just your final last attempts to do that. And I'm sure a couple of these drivers will try and improve with their next lap, or maybe 2 laps that they can fit in, but you can see some of them are pushing really hard, as well as McLaren here going up there to 7th place, which is actually 2nd in class.
Yeah, that's a fantastic performance from him, actually. Just 4 tenths behind Ibrahim Khan, who's been the class of the field all evening so far, really. And a good 7 tenths in front of actually more than 7 tenths in front of Turkka Hakkinen, one of the championship rivals, 1.1 seconds in front of him. So a good lap time there from Christian Margleri. You mentioned it earlier on, Neil. It's all about the prestige and, I guess, bragging rights as well. If you're in a championship fight and you can say that you're going to start the race in front, that does have some kind of psychological benefit for them.
Yeah, that psychological benefit as well, because of course there's a little bit of a gap between the classes as well. So if you're first in either class, you do get a completely clean road, a completely empty road in front of you. So that's also got to be very helpful, because then you don't have to really worry about any cars in front.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to make the start a little bit easier for them, hopefully. Here's Lorenzo De Suitis, by the way. This is the drive game seat Ferrari. I mentioned that it was a Porsche earlier on, but we still do have a fair amount of manufacturers inside of the top 6 fighting things out at the moment. Got Corvette represented for Zancho, Waveframe and drive game seat driving a Ferrari. Nigel Velix also in a Corvette, by the way. And Aston Martin as well, with Jean Lacey Esports and Blackhawk Racing. So 2 of each, but the Corvette of Zancho especially seems to be the strongest right now. I'm not entirely sure what they've done to that car recently, Cam, but they've put in a really strong showing at Spa, winning the race comfortably, and now they're doing this to everybody at Le Mans. As I said, I don't know what they've done to it, but it's clearly working, whatever they have.
Well, yeah, it clearly is. But as you can see from this graph, there's two of each manufacturer. So the only one missing there is the BMW, but there aren't really many BMWs in general during all of the divisions. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a car thing. It does seem that it is pretty equal on that front, but they've obviously just got so comfortable and they've really worked on the setup. They've learned how it works, and they've really got to the bottom of that car. Obviously, they're good team and driver combinations as well, but they've obviously just got in that sweet spot of making the car work.
Yeah, absolutely. Really finding the pace right now, and it's their hard work is paying off. I think that's safe to say. As coming through our nod right now, excuse me, is Lorenzo De Suitis once again. 9.5 seconds off of the overall leader that time is. In the bottom right hand side of your screen, so I wouldn't take too much from that other than the fact that he is improving on the lap time he has set so far. Currently last of the GTE runners, 6th place, and that is not really where he wants to be. A good 5-6 seconds away from the rest of the field, so he's going to want to improve. He comes through the Porsche curves right now, and we'll see where this lap time puts him. Really looks fairly controlled, fairly considered through here, not wild or wayward at any point through Corvette, especially where we're seeing a lot of the GTE cars really sliding their way through that corner, but the drive game seat car very well planted. And here is the final couple of chicanes now for this car, and we'll see where it puts him, where it's anywhere near the other Ferrari of Christian Marclera. Over the line for De Suitis right now, and it is a 2nd place just for the moment, ever so slightly quicker than the other Ferrari, so they're very, very well matched in that respect, and that's a very good time so far for the drive game seat car. They're going to have about one more shot at this as well, Neil, but yeah, they're going to be pretty pleased, I'd imagine, with a front row start provisionally.
Yeah, that provisional front row start, just 9.5 minutes to go left in the session. Well, close enough to 9.5 minutes. Means they probably just have one more run. I don't think they can do an in lap and an out lap again. Take at least across the start finish line for the checkered flag falls. So if you come into the pits now, this will be your last lap, your last run, I should say, will be the next time you leave the pits.
Yeah, it's really getting towards last chance saloon at the moment with Michi Hoyer as well in a similar situation. It's going to be quite close for him, but I think he's going to get another lap in after this one. Don't forget, you can't escape in these sessions out on the circuit. You've got to drive around and come back into the pit lane on your own without just returning to the garage. So, yeah, you've got to do it all yourself, and that does eat away at your time a little bit. But Michi Hoyer hasn't set a lap time so far. I was saying earlier how that might put a bit of fear into you, a bit of pressure on this lap then for Michi Hoyer as he comes through Corvette and towards the final chicanes right now. 3 temps down at the 2nd sector split, and Varga seem especially strong in that middle sector. Whether that's a straight line speed thing or what it is a mystery, but yeah, they do seem very strong through there. Bounces across the curbs. Does Michi Hoyer? Where is this going to put him by the end of the day? It's 3rd place for the moment, just over 3 temps down on Marcel Cintic, who's, sorry, 2nd place right now. Still over 3 temps down on where Cintic is. So it's Varga and Burst on the front row once again here. Campbell, Michi Hoyer finally able to get things together, and he's going to be very, very glad that he's finally been able to get a clean lap in this session.
Yeah, and it's not too bad of one either. That's going to be a little bit difficult for the cars behind him to overcome. We've already mentioned Jordis Vires needs to have a decent improvement. He's down there in 5th place currently. Look at D'Amelio. He's 1 second off Cintic. So there's definitely some improvements that need to be made from those couple of drivers. But I do think Michi Hoyer set a very good benchmark there. I don't think he's really going to drop down lower than maybe 4th position with that time. So that's very good. I was getting a little bit worried getting this close to the end of the session is all sections need to Felix going off really wide there out of the exit of Indianapolis. It looks like he's going to continue with the lap, but he will certainly lost some time there.
Yeah, definitely will have lost some time. 5th place at the moment for Turkka Hakkinen. He is 1.4 seconds down on Ibrahim Khan, who's leading this session, and he needs to improve by half a second, does Hakkinen, to even get inside of the next, or get ahead of the next car, which is Kasper Stoltz in 4th place. So going through the Porsche curves right now, remains to be seen whether he's going to carry on with this or pit in again, because if he does carry on with this lap, then it is going to be his last of the session. There won't be enough time with just under 7 minutes, so it might be worth getting into the pit lane here and going out for one more try a little bit later on. But a lot of pressure on these laps right now for the Nitro Velux driver. Is he going to pull into the pit lane or is he going to carry on? He pits into the lane. So deciding that lap time was not going to be good enough, and so he's going to try again a little bit later. But yeah, anyone out, you said it a little bit earlier on here, Neil, anybody out there right now is going to be on their final lap time, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on these lap times as well. We're on board with Kasper Stoltz, who was really quick in the first part of qualifying. I was expecting him to be right up there with Ibrahim Khan, because he was only 2 tenths down in the first part of qualifying, but for whatever reason, he's not quite been able to get it together in this session. On an out lap right now, and we'll see where he can get up to with the next lap. 4th place for him at the moment, 1 second down on Ibrahim Khan, and 6 tenths down on the next car in front. So it looks like we're going to have a bit of an onboard lap, and at least part of this is going to be on board with Kasper Stoltz, currently with a 57.0 and 1 second down on Ibrahim Khan. Vargas Sim Racing for the leaders, by the way, still in the pit lane, but they've still got time to leave and go out again. So is Ibrahim Khan, although he's going to have to be quick with a 4-minute outlap nearly for these GTE cars. Mosa Benamar is in the same situation in GTE, but about to finish the first sector here for Kasper Stoltz. A little bit of traffic up in front. Those guys not on laps at the moment, but Kasper Stoltz certainly is. Comes through Tech Rouge at the moment. What's the lap time going to be? Just 66 thousandths of a second behind where the leader Ibrahim Khan is right now, Cam. But the first sector is quite short, really. It's only half a minute long. So maybe that's a little bit of a disappointing first sector time for the John Lacey Esports team.
Yeah, it is. It's despite it being so short, there's actually quite a few sort of tricky corners in it, so it is actually quite a difficult one to get right. This middle sector is all about these couple of chicanes that you're seeing right now, so there's a sort of less, even though it's physically longer, there's actually sort of less places to lose time, if you get what I mean. So yeah, quite an interesting way that this circuit works. It's 3 very different sectors, first of all in terms of their length, but also in terms of the actual type of corners that they are, although most of these teams will be running as little downforce as they can run, really, because you need the straights down, the straight line speed down these straights, and that means those corners are ever so more difficult compared to the normal package, because there is actually a sort of low downforce package for this race.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the drivers then are out there at the moment. All 12 teams have got their driver out there on the circuit. In GTE, Sancho are currently leading her drive game seat, Wayframe Esports, and then it is the man you are on board with, Kasper Stoltz, driving for John Lacey Esports. What is the lap time through the middle sector? It is just under half a second down on Ibrahim Khan, so that wouldn't give him another position here. Neil, the top 3 are separated by 4 tenths of a second, but then it's a 6 tenths of a second gap down to Kasper Stoltz, so he really needs to pull something out of the bag here, even to get inside the top 3.
Yeah, 4 tenths really isn't that much at all between 3 cars, considering the length of the circuit. But as you said, Kasper Stoltz needs to try and run. I'm just wondering if he's going to be just do another push lap after this one to try and use up all the time on the clock.
Absolutely, he will have time, but will he have the fuel and tyres to do it? That was a slide through Arnage, but seemingly not phased by it. And he's got a couple of the GTE cars in the background, by the way. Those guys are on outlaps, though. Drive game seat and Nitro Velux. We'll see those guys again a little bit later on. But Kasper Stoltz now has only got 1 section of this lap coming up, and it is arguably the most difficult. The Porsche curves, especially for a GTE car, I think it is exceptionally difficult. But nice and controlled through the first part. It's given him a good line through the couple of left-handers where the wall is a lot closer than it used to be. You do need to get it right and then try and hold the line on the right-hand side as much as possible. He's done that well. It gives you a nice open corner for Corvette as well. It really does flow one into another, that little section, and so does this section here. Going too deep at the first part of the Ford chicanes ruins the second part, or vice versa. And it ruins your run to the front straight if you go a little bit wrong through the second part. So, yeah, Casper Stoltz, nicely done through the final part of that chicane, and it is an improvement from him. It's a 47.9, but I'm afraid, Cam, it's a very slight improvement, and it's only going to be 4th place for Casper Stoltz here, unless there's going to be a real good lap time right at the end, as Dennis Jordan in the first chicane. He was up in his first sector by nearly 2 tenths, but he's gone across the first chicane, and that's the end of his qualifying.
Yeah, Dennis Jordan there, really good first sector, like really, really good. That would have put himself at least, just with the improvement there, at least maybe challenging Mitch Hoyer for 2nd place, but I'm sure he still had a little bit left towards the second half of the lap. And unfortunately, just making that mistake there. That just shows you how close they are to the limit, and he's going to be a little bit annoyed with that, because 4th place is not really where you want to be starting when your direct opponent is Marcel Chinchik, who looks like he is going to be getting pole position. But yeah, just to bring you back to Jean Alesi, yeah, I'm sure they're going to be disappointed. But 4th position, yeah, it's not ideal, as I just mentioned, for Dennis Jordan, but you said last year, winner from 5th place on the grid for Hydra. So it's not over, but certainly it's going to make it just that little bit more difficult.
No, it's certainly not over. And we've still got our Varga versus Burst front row as well. And we'll be able to see if that number 49 Burst Eastbrook car can help them a little bit throughout this race. Those are the kind of dynamics we'll be talking about throughout the 24 hours next weekend. But this is the battle for GTE pole position. I think it's pretty much settled in LMP2, although, well, I say that, it may well change in the last few moments, but GTE is certainly going to be our focus first of all. The number 66 on Lacey Sports car is just in front of these guys, but I don't think they're going to improve. It's really between Lorenzo Jesuitis and Ibrahim Khan here. I think Khan is going to have this here, Neil. He's certainly got the upper hand in the final lap here, and also, even though he's purple in the first sector, the drive game seat car needs nearly half a second on the Sancho Corvette, so I feel like it is going to be difficult for them.
Yeah, half a second. How hard can it be? He's just going through Mulsanne Corner at the moment, and look at that. It's only a green sector in the middle coming down towards Mulsanne Corner. Now having a look at Marcel Chinchik, and look at that, 1/4 of a second up in his own lap time in the first sector alone.
That is very, very fast indeed. So watch out for those guys and stand back when they come over the line, because it could well be a very, very low 3-minute 23. Could we maybe dream of seeing a 3-minute 22? Well, if anybody can, then it's going to be Marcel Chinchik out here, I'd imagine. So very interesting to see what happens a little bit later on in the LMP2 category. But it's going to be GTE first. Drive game seat are going to be quickly followed by Knight of Velix, I think, on the road right now. Yes, they are, as the Turka Hakkinen comes into Arnage. But the number 87 of Ibrahim Khan is going to be the very final driver to come across the line in this session. As you can see on the top left-hand side of your screen, the checkered flag has indeed come out. So no more times are going to be started, and it's going to be drive game seat kicking us off for the very final times here. Turka Hakkinen was up slightly on his lap, only a 10th down as he came over the first sector line, so I believe he is going to be improving. But drive game seat coming through the Porsche Kurz right now. Ibrahim Khan may well be able to improve a little bit later on, but that's wide through the right-hander. Not the best entry to Corvette, and this is not looking like a lap that's going to give them pole here, Cam.
Yeah, possibly not, but 2nd place, they're going to be really happy with this one indeed. But can he finish this lap? I wouldn't be surprised, if he actually got a cut track there. So he's going to go into the pit lane. So now let's have a look. Marcel Chinchik, 1 sector to go, 2 purple sectors. In fact, he is many, many tenths up. Could he get a 22? I did say at the top of this show, I wasn't sure if they were going to quite sneak into the 22s, but with a perfect final sector, he might just be able to.
Yeah, we'll wait and see if this is going to be perfect or not. Mitch Hoyer is also coming over the line right now, so I wonder how much better this is going to be, if it is at all. going to be any better for the Burst Esports car, but it doesn't look like it was at all, because there is no lap time there, so no improvement whatsoever. Blackhawk Racing do improve and get up into 5th place in GTE, pushing down Nitro Velix into 6th, but this is the focus of all of us right now, because this is a sensational lap time right now. Marcel Chinchik pushing that car to the limit and sometimes over it, but he comes over the line right now, and it's a 3 minutes 22.8. That has absolutely demolished the LMP2 field. 0.8 of a second is the margin, and Mitchie Hoyer is going to wonder what on earth he can do to topple this Varga Sim Racing team, because that lap time is quite phenomenal from Marcel Chinchik. Coming through the final chicanes right now, Ibrahim Khan as well wasn't really up on a lap time, and I'm afraid he's not going to improve, although it is a purple final sector. So that is it for qualifying. Neil, Marcel Chinchik, complete domination.
Yeah, that Varga Sim Racing car looks incredibly strong, and all the other drivers in the LMP2 field have to be worried about that car next Saturday. So we're having a look at the qualification results now, and it is, well, it is, I can tell you, it is Marcel Chinchik and that Varga Sim Racing car on pole. And my goodness, that was strong. There we go. It's Chinchik. Well, I should say it's Varga Sim Racing, then Burst Esports Complexity, Cetres, Nitro Velix, Burst Edge Esports, Ajira, and then Rookie Monsters, the top 6 for your LMP2 category. But yes, that Varga Sim Racing car looks incredibly strong. Yeah,
we weren't expecting to see a 3 minutes 22, but that's exactly what we got. And in GTE, it was a 3 minutes 47.0 to take the pole position for Ibrahim Khan and Zancho by 0.4 of a second. Drive Game Seat, you're going to be delighted with 2nd place, I think, and Waveframe Esports are pretty pleased with 3rd, because they're championship contenders, and certainly ahead of Nitro Velix, who are in 6th place. There they are behind Blackhawk Racing, and in 4th place, just behind them, it was John Lacey Esports for Casper Stoltz, who was driving that car a little bit not quite as strong as he was in the first part of qualifying, I'm afraid. But that is it for qualifying for the VEC's 24 Hours of Le Mans. It was a fantastic session, but in the end, it was championship leaders and multiple-time race winners from Season 13, Varga Sim Racing, who take the pole position for the race, which starts next week. Make sure you join us on the Virtual Endurance Championships YouTube channel. It starts at 2 p.m. in the UK, 3 p.m. Central European time, and I hope you'll come along for the ride. It's going to be a simply phenomenal race. I absolutely cannot wait to get it started. I bet these guys can't either. So make sure you join us next Saturday for the VEC 24 Hours of Le Mans. But until then, it's goodbye for now.